Hi, everyone. We're going to just wait till about 6:05 to let more attendees log on. So we'll start our presentation at about 6:05. Hi, if you just joined us, we're going to wait till about 6:05 to get started, just to let more attendees log on. Hi, I see someone just joined. We're going to wait till about 6:05 to get started, just to let some more people log on. Hi, if you just joined us, we're going to wait till 6:05 to just let more attendees log on before we get started with our presentation. Hi, if you just logged on, we're going to get started in about a minute at 6:05, just to allow people to log on. Actually, it's 6:05. Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Secunia from NB5. NB5 are the design consultants for the Borough of Metuchen. This is a Transportation Alternatives Design Assistance Project known as TA, or Transportation Alternatives 2018, Grove Avenue and Eggert Avenue bicycle lanes in the Borough of Metuchen, Middlesex County, New Jersey. We are in the engineering design phase. This project is affiliated with NJDOT Local Aid Design Assistance. And our virtual public information center will be here from 6 to 8 p.m. We'll have our first presentation now. If more people log on, we'll repeat our presentation. So our agenda, would like to do introductions. from Metuchen. Jay, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, this is Jay Muldoon. I'm the Director of Special Projects for the Borough of Metuchen, and this is one of the projects that I'm managing.
Thank you. And Jason?
Sure, thanks. I'm Jason Delia, Borough Councilman with Metuchen, and liaison to the Traffic and Transportation Committee, which is partially why I'm involved in this project. Thanks for coming.
Okay,
everybody.
great. And Linda?
Hi, I'm Linda Koskowski. I'm Borough Council President and a longtime council member involved in road safety in Metuchen.
Okay, great. And unless we had anybody else, Mike?
Good evening. My name is Mike Kyler, NV5 highway engineer.
Great. So we'll, like I said, we'll have this presentation. We'll follow that by question and answer period. We'll ask that you use the chat box or the question window. Post-meeting comments and questions, we'll ask you to send them to Jay, the project manager, Jay Muldoon, we'll do 2 weeks from tonight, by October 20th. His phone number is 732-632-8119, and email jmuldoon@metuchen.com. So I'll ask that we'll review questions at the end of the presentation, but you can type them in the chat box. So the purpose of this project is to install bicycle facility enhancements, such as signed and striped bicycle lanes or shared lane markings along both Grove Avenue and Eggert Avenue within the borough of Metuchen. The project design and construction costs are funded by federal funds administered through NJDOT Local Aid Transportation Alternatives Program. The construction cost grant was for $307,165. The design assistance is in addition to that grant, and those are for these design services. Our project limits, as you can see here, include Eggert Avenue from Middlesex County, Route 501 Amboy Avenue, heading north along Eggert Avenue to the intersection with Middlesex County, Route 660 Woodbridge Avenue, and then continuing along Grove Avenue to the Metuchen-Edison border. It's a total of 1.26 miles. So our existing conditions along Eggert Avenue, it's under municipal jurisdiction, and it provides a curb-to-curb width of approximately 28 feet. The photo shown on the left is Eggert Avenue at Hanson Avenue, looking north towards Woodbridge Avenue. And Grove Avenue, again, it's under municipal jurisdiction by the borough, and that curb-to-curb width varies, but it's approximately 36 feet. The photo shown is Grove Avenue near Henry Street, Oakland Avenue, looking north towards the Amtrak Northeast Corridor Railroad. The existing curves for the roadways determine the proposed treatments. We're not proposing any widening. If there was widening of the roadway, there would be curb work, utility work, drainage, and it was outside the scope of the project. For our proposed improvements along Eggert Avenue, there'll be shared lane markings within the travel lanes on each travel lane, and that's to alert motorists and road users that cyclists are sharing the lane with them. Along Grove Avenue, there'll be both signed and striped dedicated bicycle lanes, including color pavement treatment along each side of the roadway where we could fit it. Where we can't fit it, there will be shared lane markings to be installed in the vicinity of dedicated turn lanes along the roadway, and anywhere bicycle lanes cannot be installed within the existing curb-to-curb width. So through the intersections, cyclists will share the lanes with motorists, and we'll go through them as we go through the improvements. So the typical design treatments that we'll be using on this project, the image shown on the left will be used along Eggert Avenue and portions of Grove, and that's basically a pavement marking demonstrating that they are sharing the road. The image on the left with the dimensions is right from the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, known as MUTCD. So it's a standard requirements with the symbols and the sizes of the pavement markings. The image on the right is actually is a sample of a shared lane marking that's currently on Woodridge Avenue near Spear Street, just east of Grove Avenue intersection. And for the typical design treatments of the bicycle lanes, what's shown on the left is a sample from Route 35 in Lavallette, New Jersey. What's shown on the right is a color treatment similar to what's going to be proposed on this project, and that sample is from Newark, New Jersey. So it's a color, it's the pavement would be colored to designate the bike lane. The typical design treatments for the bicycle safe, what's known as bicycle safe grates. The images are examples of different drainage grates. So during design, we reviewed the existing grates that are out there, and we actually found two along Woodridge Avenue that are not considered bicycle safe. On the left, it's a bicycle safe grate. A wheel of a bicycle would not be able to get caught on it. On the right, that's Grove Avenue and Woodridge Avenue is an example of what's considered non-compliant or a not bicycle safe grate, because a wheel could actually, the wheel of a bicycle could get caught at that, causing a crash. So those will be updated so that they're bicycle safe grates. At this time, I'm gonna turn it over to Mike Kylar, and we're gonna review the actual PE or preliminary engineering plan set. This set, along with the presentation, along with our PowerPoint and the video of this presentation, will be posted on Metuchen's website after the meeting. It'll probably be uploaded depending upon when Metuchen can upload it, but it'll be uploaded this week. And there'll be a PDF of these plans, so you can zoom in on any of anything for detail.
Good evening, everybody. For the review of our preliminary engineering plans, the sheet that you see on the screen is our plan sheet index, and it shows the layout of the plan throughout the project limits, from Eggard Avenue heading up to the border with Edison. For construction plan 1, this sheet includes the beginning of the project along Eggard Avenue, starting from Middlesex County Route 501 Amboy Avenue and heading north towards Hanson Avenue. So the proposed improvements include shared lane markings, which are shown in red due to the existing width of the roadway. Signage along each side of the road will be updated to include shared the road signs, which you can actually see in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. The project will be constructed within the roadway and the public right-of-way with no anticipated impacts to properties or utilities. For plan sheet 2, this sheet continues along Eggard Avenue, heading towards the intersection with County Route 660, Woodbridge Avenue, and the start of the Grove Avenue towards New York Avenue. The proposed shared lane markings continue up to and through the intersection due to the existing width and the presence of dedicated turn lanes on Grove Avenue. Following the intersection, the proposed improvements include a 5-foot wide dedicated bike lane with color pavement treatments, which are shown in red on the plans. So from this point, heading towards the north. For sheet 3, this sheet continues from the area north of New York Avenue, past Oakland Park, and towards the Amtrak Railroad overpass. The dedicated bike lanes and color pavement treatments continue. For sheet 4, from the railroad overpass heading towards Highland Avenue, the dedicated bike lanes and pavement treatments continue. And for sheet 5, this sheet continues from Highland Avenue heading towards Woodside Avenue. The dedicated bike lanes and color pavement treatments continue. And due to the presence of a curb bump out near the corner of Grove Avenue and Woodside Avenue, which is on the right-hand side of your screen, The proposed improvements include restriping the existing double yellow center line stripes so the proposed bike lane can maintain a minimum of 5 feet of width for this area. And then following Woodside Avenue as Grove Avenue approaches State Route 27 at Middlesex Avenue, the bicycle lane continues to head north, and due to the presence of dedicated turn lanes, which we'll cover on the next sheet. So as Denise mentioned before on sheet 6, this is New Jersey Route 27, Middlesex Avenue, heading north towards Stoneham Place. Due to the presence of dedicated turn lanes on Grove Avenue from Middlesex Avenue, the dedicated bike lanes and shared lane markings are proposed. And then following the signalized intersection, the bike lanes continue to the north. And then another interesting point, at milepost 0.77, Stoneham Place, there's another New Jersey Department of Transportation project for the bridge replacement over Conrail's Port Reading Secondary Railroad, which ends over by the Metuchen High School driveway. On sheet 7, this sheet continues from Crystal Street to an area north of the Metuchen High School driveway. So the proposed improvements include dedicated bike lanes with color pavement treatments, with exception for the Port Reading Secondary Railroad structure. And that's partly due because of the existing width. Shared lane markings will be proposed in this area. And as previously noted, NJDOT separate project will replace this structure with a wider typical section, which will accommodate bicyclists and coordination with DOT is ongoing. And for the last construction sheet, this sheet continues from an area north of the Metuchen High School driveway, heading towards Mason Drive and the Metuchen Edison Municipal. The proposed improvements include dedicated bike lanes and color treatments, and the project comes to an end at the municipal line.
Thanks, Mike.
Denise.
Yeah, so environmental services associated with this project, we are using federal funds, and when federal funds are used, the environmental document, in this case, is called the Categorical Exclusion Document, or CED. That's prepared by NJDOT. We coordinate with them, and that addresses everything from any potential environmental issues, including deforestation, which we're not going to have any clearing of trees, cultural resources, ecology, threatened and endangered species, wetlands, air and noise, hazardous materials, public reactions such as this public information center, socioeconomics, and environmental permits. We do not anticipate any impacts because we're not widening the road. We're signing and striping and colored pavement, but because federal funds are being used, this document is required. So some of our next steps, we'll answer any questions and we'll review comments from this public information center. Like we said, we're going to have a comment period for 2 weeks after this evening. We'll complete the preliminary engineering plans. We'll get information over to DOT and their environmental team, which is the Bureau of Environmental Program Resources, or BEPR. They'll prepare the CED, or the Categorical Exclusion Document. When that's approved, we can finalize preliminary engineering phase. Our anticipated schedule for preliminary engineering is to be completed with that approved environmental document. If we could get it by the end of this year, great, but it takes some coordination. So we're thinking early next year. And final design, since it is signing and striping, we just have to spec out some things like the color of the pavement. And we anticipate that can be done early next year with the construction start of 2022. In the final design phase, since we are using federal funds, we will conduct another public information center. So we're going to open it up to questions. You can ask questions this evening. If you think about something afterwards, we ask you to submit your questions and comments to Jay Muldoon by October 20th. This meeting summary, as we said, the plans, the video, and the PowerPoint will be posted on the borough's website. Jay Muldoon's information, contact information is below. I'm Metuchen Borough, Director of Special Projects, 500 Main Street, Metuchen, New Jersey, 08840. His phone number is 732-632-8119 and email jmuldoon@metuchen.com. And we appreciate any input, so we'll open it up to questions. Mike, I see that there were some questions, so I think they're going to you.
Yeah, we have 3 questions so far tonight so far.
Okay, if you could read them, I'm listening.
Yeah. Will the session be recorded for replay?
Yes. So yes, it'll be posted on the website. If more attendees log on, we'll repeat the presentation at 7:05. Either way, we'll be here till 8 p.m. because it was a 2-hour public information center. So it'll be available on the website. It just takes a while to download. We have to download it first and then we get it over to Metuchen. So it may take a day or 2 for it to get uploaded.
Next question is there any way we can make them protected bike lanes?
Okay, so for a protected bike lane, we need a lot more room. And Mike, if you pull up maybe the photo of the existing roadway, to be a protected bike lane, we would have to widen the roadway. Widening the roadway involves moving back the curb. If you go back to the existing, I think it was number 5. Yeah. So if we widen the roadway in order to provide a protected bike lane, we have to move the curb, we have to move the utilities, move the sidewalk, the drainage. It's a substantial project, and it was outside the scope of the original grant. The original grant did not anticipate those efforts. So unfortunately, we really don't have the room to do that here.
The next question, is there any cooperation or discussion with Edison Township on continuing the bike lanes farther on Grove Avenue?
So Jay, I don't know if you want to answer that. When this original grant was done, were there any discussions with Edison? And Mike, if you pull up the overall project limits, slide 4. Yeah, we end at the border.
Right. So we've made Edison aware of this plan. They've been aware of it for quite a while. As you can see, the grant was initially back in 2018. But we haven't really had any discussions with them. I don't know to what degree it would be a priority to them. I don't think they're as focused on this issue as Metuchen is. So, I think we will continue to, now that, as we're progressing in the project, letting them know that this is going to be a reality, and they might want to work plans into theirs, municipalities' plans to leverage this and extend it. But we're not going to be dependent upon or hold up this because of the Edison's possibility or not. So, as I said, we'll continue to let them be aware of this. We invited Edison officials to this meeting tonight. So again, another example of reaching out to them.
Thanks, Jay.
Next question, will parking still be allowed along the curb on Grove Avenue in areas with bike lanes?
Okay, so we looked at existing parking. We also looked at homes where they have their driveways and their access. Parking will not be permitted within the bike the dedicated bike lanes. Parking won't be prohibited, won't be allowed. In cases something came up and they said, well, what about the synagogue? If there's a special event by police order, they could temporarily close the bike lane and allow parking. But that would be something that would be temporary. But Mike, if you pull up the picture that shows, or any of the plan sheets, you know, the 5-foot bike lane, we don't have room for a 5-foot bike lane, you know, and parking. Yeah, it's like the dedicated bike lane, yeah. But we did make sure that we checked that if somebody didn't have, you know, a driveway or access to their home, and right now they're parking on the street, that we were making an inconvenience by putting a bike lane, and there weren't any instances of that occurring.
Another comment just came in. I have lived off Grove for 10 years. The traffic is pretty bad. We have challenges making turns onto Grove. Has a traffic study been done to ensure this is safe for bicyclists, as they may include children?
So a traffic study was not done during this phase. There may have been some earlier studies that were done when the grant was applied. These are bike lanes along live traffic or sharing the road. So, you know, wouldn't anticipate very young children riding in them unattended, if that's what they're thinking. It's not a separated bicycle lane. And Jay, I don't know if you could talk about any earlier studies that were done in the planning phase that address that.
I'm not aware that traffic studies were done prior to the grant being written. You know, I think it's, and maybe you as consultants would know this better than me, but I don't think a bike lane is a type of you know, installation where traffic studies are normally done in order to determine whether, you know, this makes sense or not. I think the thought around Grove Avenue, why that was selected, this will be our first bike lane in town, were the following. One is it is wide enough. Many of our other roads and also busy roads don't have the width to support it. Two, the fact that Metuchen High is located on Grove Avenue, and we had learned from the principal and others that, and from parents too, that some students were hesitant to ride their bike to Metuchen High, and we thought, well, a bike lane would enable more students to bike to high school because of its, you know, I think because it's a very visible lane, because it's, you know, painted pavement. So the thought was it may actually help reduce traffic in the morning, because if more students are riding their bike to the high school because they feel safer in the bike lane, that reduces parents driving kids to the high school, which would lessen traffic and also contribute to it being safer. So those were some of the key points in why Grove Avenue was selected.
In addition to the pavement markings, you have both pavement markings, you can have colored pavement, there's signage. So there's signage alerting motorists that there's, you know, bike lane, there's pavement markings, and it's giving when it's the dedicated bike lane, it's giving the dedicated space. So there's more awareness than there is today.
If I may, just to add on to Mr. Muldoon's point, In, I believe it was 2016, the borough did conduct a bicycle and pedestrian plan that went through and identified all the bicycle network corridors throughout town, as well as walking paths and to create a complete network for bicycling and walking. Grove Avenue was identified as the top street for adding this type of facilities. And that is why I believe we pursued it in a grant. This was before my time, I think, when we applied for it, but I believe that's why we pursued that as a grant opportunity. And that's where a lot of this is coming from by Grove.
Right, and that this was a location where you did have curb to curb width, although not in every location along the corridor, but primarily along the corridor, you had room to fit it without totally reconstructing the road, a big expense with utility relocation, sidewalk, right-of-way issues with adjacent properties and, clearing street trees. This was an area where it could fit.
Looks like the next question, will Amboy Avenue Sharrows be replaced at the intersection with Eggert Avenue?
So actually, our limits are only on Eggert and Grove. So if you're saying on the cross street, if it's something that, I don't know if the attendee is saying that they're worn, if it's something of a maintenance issue, that should be addressed, before our project.
Yeah, and the Sharrows were placed on Amboy 2 to 3 years ago, maybe it's longer, by the county, and the maintenance of them is up to the borough. So I think I know at least once we've had Public Works go and repaint the markings, and we'll have them do that again. I mean, that's part of the responsibility of the borough to maintain those.
Next question. You used Lavalette, New Jersey, Route 35 as the analog. There's a very big difference in width versus Grove Avenue. Can you please explain why this is the best analog for this project?
Well, we just wanted to show what pavement marking would look like. Mike, if you pull that up, that's slide number 8. We just wanted to show what the pavement marking basically looked like, that MUTCD pavement marking. So these are typical design treatments. Yeah, what's on the right for Newark is similar to what would be proposed. And Mike, if you zoom in, that symbol is actually where that car is parked on the Newark sample. It's just a little bit up above from where we had the picture.
Mm-hmm.
But just to show, yeah. So where Mike has the cursor, the arrow of the cursor, there is that pavement marking of the bicycle and an arrow.
Let's see. The next question up is, are there any plans and signage to connect this to the Greenway?
So as far as, Jay, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, that reminded me that was another reason why Grove Avenue was selected for the bike lane, in addition to what Jason and I said earlier, because it brings you close to the Greenway. So as we probably all know, in order to get to the Greenway, you would have to cross Amboy and then go up to Green Street. Well, there's a couple of different ways you can go. You can go to Green Street, or you could go left to Pearson, where Town Mall is, and access the Greenway there. So I think Denise was probably about to say that's beyond the scope of this project, since the project will end at Amboy. But I'm just making a request or a thought. Perhaps we, as part of the project, or maybe the borough could do that. Maybe there could be some signage
Yeah.
of how to get to the Greenway.
Right. So we call that wayfinding signage. So that's something that can be incorporated, like I said, if you do it at the same time or within the project sign at that area. But yeah, so that's considered wayfinding, just directing them. But yeah, the limits are set based upon the grants. These were competitive grants. So we can't really extend limits. There were other municipalities that went after grants and maybe didn't get them. So we like to stay true to the original intent or spirit of the grant application. But that's just a matter of a sign. Something like that shouldn't be a problem.
Next question up. How will the markings be maintained following this project? Is it safe to say it'll cost about $300,000 once the color fades? Will this cost be covered by the federal grant?
So the federal grant does not include maintenance. Even if a project had sidewalk, it would be installing the sidewalk, but maintenance would be on the borough. So similar to what Jay said, pavement markings were done on Amboy Street, maybe by the county a few years ago. And now if somebody is saying that they're worn, if you have a rough winter and there's a lot more salt, it might get worn even more. For the pavement itself, I think we had examples and they were in well excess of over 10 years. It's an application. The signs would already be there. The signs should be lasting more than that. So you wouldn't think it would be the whole $300,000 again for that or for the treatment. But to answer part of that question, which I think I started off with, maintenance is not included in the grant applications, and that's consistent with all transportation alternatives or safe routes to school grants. Maintenance is on what's known as the LPA or local public agency, in this case, which is Metuchen.
Next comment. The corner of Middlesex Avenue and Grove is already a very complex right and turn or left. How will these markings interplay?
Okay, so Mike, if you either want to zoom in, the grant did not account for carrying the bicycle lanes through the intersections. If they were to go through the intersections, within our corridor, there's actually 3 signalized intersections. You would have to upgrade the traffic signals. It was beyond the scope of the grant. That's something at a time when the intersections do have to be upgraded, that can be incorporated. It was not part of this grant. So they will be sharing the road similar to as a bicycle would do now. There'll be some signage, but there's not a dedicated bike facility through the intersection. It just couldn't fit. So they would have to share.
Why not create a bike lane across Norris Avenue rather than Grove?
So Jay, they're talking about the length of it, or?
I guess someone's suggesting that Norris would be a better road than Grove. I'm gonna guess that's what the person's saying.
So
I think the borough may look to extend the network. I mean, Jason mentioned the study that was done 2016, I think, which created a proposed network of bike lanes that were kind of interconnected. So Norris would make a nice addition to this, so you can have connectivity that would take you across town. So I don't know. The question is why was this selected over Norris? I don't really have an answer for that. I don't know if that was even considered. I think this was probably viewed as a more to be more used than maybe than Norris is. And I don't know, it's probably wide enough. I'm just going with my recollection of it, but I think it's a really windy road at times, so I don't know if that's a factor. But I guess the answer is I don't think Norris was really evaluated as a candidate versus Grove.
Yeah, they weren't compared against each other. And I think as Jay and Jason both said earlier, is that there were earlier studies done, and this roadway, Grove Avenue, was selected because it did have the width to provide some type of treatment and kind of as a start. But, you know, your ultimate goal is you have a network of other areas that you'll be looking at.
And I think it also, one other point was, you know, we have Sharrows on, you know, Amboy, Woodbridge, and Route
Woodbridge.
27,
Right.
Highway 27. So Grove, you know, connects with those. So, you know, that was a factor too, that there's, and not that a shared lane marking is as impactful as a bike lane, but you know, the Sharrows are supposed to indicate share the road. So, you know, I know some people are biking on those streets. So now to have a connectivity to a bike lane sort of work towards that goal of a network.
Yeah, so those three signalized intersections are within the limits. Jay mentioned Amboy, we're just starting to the north of that. Our plans, north is to the right, the north arrow is up in that right-hand corner. And then there's also Woodbridge Avenue and Route 27. So there are three signalized intersections, but the grant did not include improvements to those intersections. But as Jay said, along those corridors, Amboy, Woodbridge Avenue, and Route 27, there are already Sharrows where road users can anticipate that cyclists may be in the roadway.
And Denise, another factor that we considered was in looking at Grove, and I think, you know, everyone will agree, there's not a lot of parking on Grove, right? I'm not saying there's none, but there's not a lot of parking on Grove. If you look at Norris or Mason, the opposite is it's not true. There's lots of people parking on those streets. So the consideration of when you implement a bike lane, on-street parking is no longer considered. You have a much more disruptive situation on Norris and Mason with the homeowners as to compared on Grove, where, as Denise indicated, work was done to look at, you know, access, who has driveways, who has a driveway or access in the rear through an alley. So this isn't going to be just as disruptive to the parking situation as it would be on other roads such as Norris.
There's also a little bit of an element of what's called a road diet here that we're looking to add on. So Grove Avenue, as many know, we lowered the speeds from 35 down to 25 on the roadway, but the road is still fairly wide and there's not much parking. So as a driver driving down that road, it doesn't feel like 25. So being able to have this opportunity to add these bicycle facilities with bright green pavement on each side, it's really going to narrow down that roadway, and it's going to make that road feel more like a local road, which it is, and it's very much a local residential road with schools and parks. So this is going to help not only bicyclists get to and from where they're going, but it's going to make that whole roadway safer for people driving as well.
Right, when there's an awareness and something, you know, as in the pavement markings, it's something visual, there'll be signage. I know there was a concern that came in before this presentation where someone said, well, we don't want sign clutter. We're going to have the required amount of signs to alert road users of the, you know, where it's share the road, where it's the bike lane, but there won't be an overabundance of signs that are not necessary. I know that was one of the concerns.
Looks like another comment came in. Eggert Avenue is very narrow and parking is legal on both sides.
Yeah, so on Eggert Avenue is where it's 25 miles per hour. And Mike, if you pull up that photo. Yeah, we're not proposing, we could not fit. We would have loved to have fit, as Jason said, you know, a colored bike lane. We just didn't have the width there. So that's where there's going to be the sharrows or the pavement markings to say that you can anticipate cyclists and they're going to be the roadway with vehicles.
Looks like this comment was related to the Norris Avenue one. Norris leads to the high school and is safer, which I think we already.
Yeah, I think it wasn't that we're pitting Norris against this. I think as Jay and Jason said, is that this came up as an opportunity for something. You know, we'll note that in the comments for Norris, but it wasn't that, hey, you know, let's compare Norris to this one and why did you pick Grove?
You know, I would also just add that that Grove, in addition to being a conduit to the high school, as we mentioned before, it's also a route to the Greenway. So we were looking for ways that we could make the most connections. So between the roads that have the sharrows, including Amboy and Woodbridge, and then the route to the Greenway, plus the high school, I think all of those things made Grove just, you know, a very good candidate for this kind of treatment.
Let's see. Another comment. Grove Avenue is a busy street and people generally drive over the 25-mile-an-hour limit. Would there be heightened enforcement of speed and other traffic regulations after the lanes are put in place?
So that's an enforcement issue. I mean, we could build it, but beyond that, you know, if it's an enforcement, that's something for the borough to address.
Right. So obviously enforcement is a needed step in this process. And we'll continue to speak with the police chief about that. I know that when the speed limit reduction was made, there was and continues to be, you know, increase in enforcement by the police. I mean, the police can't be on that road 24 hours a day or, you know, all day. But it is one of the priority places that they do look for enforcing the speed limit. And likewise, I think this will just even heighten the need for that. So again, we can't guarantee that they'll be there, you know, all the time, especially when one of us is driving and we see the people speeding, but it is a priority and will be a continued area of focus for the police.
Yeah, so beyond speeding, if somebody's parked in the bike lane, that's obviously not permitted. So that would be an enforcement type issue.
Looks like another comment came in. We can barely pull in and out of our driveway with no bike lanes. How will we be able to park on the street, cross the street, and pull into our driveways?
So the parking on the street, if it's an area where it's the sharrow, you could still park on the street. Nothing would be changed there. If it's an area on Grove where you have the dedicated bike lane, the bike lane is proposed in each direction and you wouldn't be able to park on the street. So I think part of it is, you know, you won't be able to park on the street if there's the bike lane there. And then as far as, you know, accessing your driveway, now there could be cyclists on there. There'll be more attention that, hey, there's a bike lane. If you have a visitor or somebody coming, there's a green pavement there. You're anticipating that, a cyclist could be in the roadway in that area.
And as a follow-up, we also have emergency vehicles that head to the hospital and North Edison through Eggert and Grove.
Yeah, so emergency vehicles, if an emergency vehicle is coming, a cyclist, it's just similar to a driver, should move over to the right to allow emergency vehicle.
Mhm.
And a cyclist is a lot more able to move away from an emergency vehicle than a car, obviously. So
Right, and we're not, this project is not reducing the width of the street. It's not interfering with the passage lane. So a fire truck, a police car, an ambulance will be able to travel on this Grove Avenue exactly the same way they travel today. So it's not,
Right, so the improvements are what we call at grade. Somebody said, can you put a barrier and make it safer? There wasn't a room to put a barrier. So yeah, emergency vehicle, if there's nobody in the bike lane, emergency vehicle could enter the bike lane if they had to. There's nothing physical that would be obstructing that.
Another comment came in. What kind of financing is needed to replace the Middlesex Grove Avenue traffic light to include a pedestrian and bike-only cycle? Is that something that could also be proposed for grant support?
So just in our experience with transportation alternative type grants, and there might be other grants, those grants usually do not include traffic signals. That's just been our experience. I'm not sure exactly why. And they can be expensive, and the whole new traffic signal can be expensive. Is that it? I'm assuming that it's a county signal?
Yeah, Middlesex County 660, yeah, Woodbridge.
Yeah. So,
Oh, sorry, Middlesex.
was the
yes.
question
yeah.
about Woodbridge or was it about 27?
Yeah, I can't see the
Replacement
questions,
Middlesex.
Mike, so.
Mike, what was the question
It says,
about
yeah, Middlesex Grove Avenue one.
Middlesex? Okay. Jason or Linda, you might be closer to this, but I know there's discussion with DOT about that, the light there and trying to, add the left turn lane. So
So that's 327, right? So, yeah,
Nope.
if he is if whether it's DOT or a county is improving a traffic signal along this corridor in the future, yeah, the request would be made to accommodate. Similar
Right.
to what we talked about, if they had to widen to accommodate, there might be impacts at the corners. But as far as funding for that, I guess the borough could see, but as far as the grants in our experience, usually the traffic signals are not included. But we
So
could,
as part of the, I'm sorry, as part of the reduction of the speed on Route 27, we were talking to the state about a need for a protected left turn off of Grove at that intersection. At the time, they said they needed to do a traffic study. However, that was right when the pandemic started and the
Pre-COVID.
shutdowns came. So, yeah, with the COVID shutdown. So it was the traffic study that they performed was not reflective of actual traffic when school's in session and that sort of thing. So that we are going to continue to pursue that with the state. And my understanding of it is if the state does approve the change in the signal, they will share the cost with the borough. And I believe it will be the bulk of the cost. Is that correct, Jason? I think you were part of that discussion.
what I recall was it would be on the borough to provide 25% of the cost is what I recall from those meetings.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right.
The next comment, the follow-up to the protected bike lane question. Can you look into having a bike lane on only one side of the road? Then you would have enough space for it to be protected, or another option, have an elevated bump like a mini speed bump along the outside of the bike lanes to let cars know that there's a separation between the car lane and the bike lane.
So if we did what's called like a two-way bike lane or cycle track, I just know in other communities, the thought of, you know, two different directions, it's usually not favorable. I don't know, Jay, if that was considered at all. It wasn't when we got the grant, it was for a bike lane in each direction and not what the attendee is asking to say, hey, if you combined it, we have 5-foot bike lanes. So if you did a shared use path, there's like a minimum of 8 feet. Like if you said, okay, why don't we make this thing a shared use path and have it for, you know, cyclists and pedestrians. Even in that case, you have existing sidewalk. So if you were to eliminate the sidewalk, that would be a lot of construction. If you were going to do a two-way bike lane or a cycle track, I just don't think that was the vision along this corridor, but I don't want to speak for the borough.
Yeah, I think, again, referencing back to the PED plan done in 2016, and on that proposed network, I think there were a series of options looked at for the various streets, including, you know, bike lanes and then sharrows. I think protected bike lanes, and I'm not sure about the bike track back then, but in that study, I think the recommendation for Grove was what we wrote the grant for, which is on both sides.
Yeah.
So, you know, the various treatments were considered in that PED plan that was done in 2016.
And when I talked about a shared use path, if you had combined them, the minimum is 8 foot. That's if you could justify an environmental impact or something like that. It's usually desirable 10 feet or wider. That type of application is not practical in this area where you already have curb and sidewalk. And as Jay said, the goal was, you know, accommodate cyclists, and a bike lane in each direction of travel is what had been proposed.
The next question, does the borough have any indication how many people ride their bikes over Grove today?
So that would be any bicycle counts.
I'm trying to remember if in the 2016 study that was done.
We could look to see if we have that information, and then we're going to have comments and responses posted after the meeting. So if you don't know for sure, we could find out.
Yeah, be good. Yeah, that's one we need to do a little research on.
And I think we got to talking, the question before that also said, would you consider some type of speed bump, or they called it a speed bump, but they meant something physical in between the travel lane and the bike lane itself, and that wasn't considered. A lot of people don't actually like when they have the speed bumps sometimes for noise or something else, but I think they're thinking something parallel to distinguish it. It's going to be colored. There's going to be signing and striping, so road users should be aware.
Another 2 comments came in. We also have emergency vehicles traveling on Eckerd Avenue and Grove, and will Eckerd Avenue be painted with bike lanes?
No, so on Eckerd Avenue, we couldn't fit, and actually that's what Mike had the drawing up. Yeah, so that's going to be what we're calling the sharrows, or the pavement markings. So there's not a dedicated bike lane along Eckerd.
And
Denise, we're looking at the time, we may have people joining
we
us
have-
that didn't
Yeah,
hear the
so-
presentation, so
Yeah, so what we'll
I don't
do
know.
is,
So I just want to get,
yeah, so we had for our notices set at 7:05. So Mike, you could usually tell if new people logged on, and then we'll repeat our presentation at 7:05 if that's the case, and we'll continue our questions and answers. If nobody new logged on, then, we can just continue. It'll be, however we're directed. But we did say 7:05, so some people might not log on until right at 7:05.
it looked like 2 new people came on and then 2 people left. So
Yeah, so I don't know if you could tell who's who. Or by the time they logged on in your analytics.
someone just said in the comments, I just logged on.
Okay, great. So we will at 7:05, just because that's how the notice is. We will repeat the presentation at 7:05. So Mike, I was seeing before on mine, and now they're all gone, I guess because they were answered. All the questions were answered.
We have 2 questions remaining if you want to cover those now or wait
Yeah.
until after the presentation.
We can cover them now while we're waiting until 7:05.
All right. Following up on the 2-way bike path, wouldn't a protected path still be preferable to an unprotected one?
So as far as safety or something else, I think what Jay and Jason had talked about before, I don't know if that was considered previously, and then they would still have to cross the streets, at other times. So at the time the grant was written, are most people, traveling along it, there's sometimes different considerations. So, there could be benefits either way.
And the last question available now is the bridge going to be widened with the markings, as it seems the bridge is not wide enough?
So the bridge project is NJDOT's separate project than this. And we have reached out to the project manager. They're aware of this project and we're aware of their project. And as Mike said, they are proposing to widen. So they will carry some type of treatment across the structure. So I think that answer the question.
yeah, and just to add on to that, in the bridge replacement project, besides widening and I think sort of straightening the span, there's also going to be
I think
sidewalk on both sides. Today we only have sidewalk on one side, so that bridge replacement is going to provide quite a few improvements, including the sidewalk on both sides and a wider road. So hopefully the bike lane can be when they do that, incorporate the bike lane into that bridge project.
But it's anticipated that this project would finish way before that. So in the meantime, there would be they're calling for sharrows along the actual bridge structure, the existing one today.
Correct. Yeah. So since it can't be accommodated and our project would be completed before then, and then when theirs came in, they would carry a treatment. So at 7:05, we'll repeat our presentation. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. But just to be consistent, we'll get to those questions at the end of the second presentation. Okay, it's 7:05. Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Tacuna from NV5. We're the design consultants for the Borough of Metuchen. This is our Public Information Center for Transportation Alternatives Design Assistance Project, known as TA 2018 Grove Avenue and Eggert Avenue bicycle lanes. It's located in the Borough of Metuchen, Middlesex County. We are what's in known as the preliminary engineering phase, or PE phase. This project is part of NJDOT Local Aid Design Assistance. We'll be here till 8 p.m. tonight. We did a presentation earlier this evening. This is being recorded and it'll be posted on Borough of Metuchen's website along with project plans and the PowerPoint presentation. For our agenda tonight, I'd like to just go through some introductions from Metuchen. Jay Muldoon, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks. Hi, Jay Muldoon, the Director of Special Projects with the Borough of Metuchen. And this bike lane project is one of the projects that I'm managing.
Thank you. And Jason?
Yes, Jason Delia, Borough Councilman and liaison to the Traffic and Transportation Committee.
Thank you. And Linda?
I'm Linda Koskowski. I'm the Borough Council President and someone who's worked on different road safety projects throughout Metuchen.
And Mike?
Hi, I'm Mike Tyler, NV5 Highway Engineer.
Thanks. So after this presentation, we'll open it up to questions and we'll ask that you use the chat box that's in the webinar. After the meeting, we'll ask that you send any post-meeting comments to Jay Muldoon. We'll have a 2-week comment period, so if you can send them by October 20th, that's appreciated. His phone number is 732-632-8119 and email jmuldoon@metuchen.com. So the purpose of this project is to install bicycle facility enhancements such as signed or striped bike lanes or shared lane markings along Grove Avenue and Eggert Avenue, all within the Borough of Metuchen. The project itself, both the design and construction costs, are funded by federal funds and they're administered through NJDOT Local Aid Design Assistance Program, or Transportation Alternatives Program, known as TA. A grant. It was a 2018 grant and the borough was awarded $307,165 for construction. They also, in addition to that, got design assistance services, which we're providing NV5 for the borough. Our next slide shows our project location and the limits. So it's a total of 1.26 miles. The project extends from Eggert Avenue from Middlesex County, Route 501, known as Amboy Avenue, heading north along Eggert Avenue to the intersection of Middlesex County, Route 660 or Woodbridge Avenue, and then continuing north along Grove Avenue to the Metuchen-Edison border. There's 3 signalized intersections. We're not doing improvements at the signalized intersections, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we move along. So Eggert Avenue on the left, it's under municipal jurisdiction. The existing curb to curb width is about 28 feet. The photo shown here was taken at Eggert Avenue at Hanson Avenue, looking north towards Woodbridge Avenue. The posted speed limit on Eggert Avenue is 25 miles per hour. On Grove Avenue, it's also under municipal jurisdiction, and that provides a curb to curb width and variable about 36 feet. The photo shown here is Grove Avenue near Henry Street, Oakland Avenue intersection, looking north towards the Amtrak or Northeast Corridor railroad overpass. So the existing curb to curb widths along these 2 project corridors really determine the proposed improvements. And we'll talk about the proposed improvements. So on Eggert Avenue, on both of these, the proposed improvements are going to be within the existing pavement. We're not proposing widening where we have to move curb and impact utilities and drainage and potentially need for right-of-way. On Eggert Avenue, what's proposed is shared lane markings within the travel lanes to be installed on each side of the roadway. And that image that you see up on the upper right is the type of pavement marking. On Grove Avenue, both signed and striped dedicated bicycle lanes, including colored pavement treatment, where we can fit that along each side of the roadway. We will have at locations on Grove Avenue shared lane markings, and they'll be installed in the vicinity of dedicated turn lanes along the roadway or anywhere where the bicycle lanes themselves, the dedicated bicycle lanes, can't be installed within the existing curb-to-curb width. And both these type of treatments are really to alert road users that cyclists will be sharing the road, which is the image on the left, or as we showed before, even the colored pavement. So here, the image that you see on the left is shared lane markings, which are proposed both along Eggert Avenue and areas of Grove Avenue. The image that you see with the dimensions of the pavement markings is right from what's called MUTCD, or the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. The image on the right is showing actual pavement marking. In this case, it's on Woodbridge Avenue near Spear Street, just east of the Grove Avenue intersection. So this design treatment is just to show samples of bicycle lanes. The one on the left is Route 35 in Lavallette, New Jersey, and the one on the right is similar to what would be proposed here, which is actually a colored bike lane. That pavement marking, and Mike, maybe you could show with your cursor up by the car up on the right, where Mike's showing with the cursor, that pavement marking is actually within the colored pavement. Along with pavement markings, and we'll also have signage, is we'll be upgrading any non-compliant or not bicycle safe grates. The image on the left is a typical grate on Grove Avenue, which is considered bicycle safe. The one on the right, which is sometimes called like a stream grate, that's non-compliant because the wheel of a bicycle can actually fit in that and create a crash. So we have 2 locations where we're proposing that the grates be replaced, but for the most part along our project limits, there already are existing bicycle safe grates. So at this time, I'm going to have Mike Keller actually go through our preliminary engineering progress print plans. These plans, the PDF of them, will also be posted on the website, and we'll just walk through the improvements on the plans before we continue the rest of our presentation.
Well, good evening, everyone. This sheet is the plan sheet index, and it shows the layout of the plan sheets within our project limits. So we start at Eggert Avenue and head along Grove Street, or Grove Avenue, up to the municipal border. So for construction plan 1, this sheet includes the beginning of the project along Eggert Avenue, starting from Middlesex County Route 501 Amboy Avenue and heading north towards Hanson Avenue. The proposed improvements include shared lane markings, which are shown in red on the plan, due to the existing width of the roadway. Signage along each side of the road will be upgraded to include shared the road signs, which are shown in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. This project will be constructed within the roadway and the public right-of-way with no anticipated impacts to properties or existing utilities. And for construction plan 2, this sheet continues along Eggert Avenue towards the intersection with Middlesex County Route 660 Woodbridge Avenue and the start of Grove Avenue heading towards New York Avenue. The proposed shared lane markings continue up to and through the intersection due to the existing width and the presence of dedicated turn lanes on Grove Avenue. Following the intersection, the proposed improvements include a 5-foot wide dedicated bicycle lanes with color pavement treatments, which are shown in green and red on the plan. For construction plan 3, this sheet continues from an area north of New York Avenue, past Oakland Park, and heading towards the Amtrak Railroad overpass. The dedicated bike lanes and colored pavement treatments continue. For sheet 4, this sheet continues from the Amtrak overpass heading towards Highland Avenue, and the dedicated bike lanes and colored pavement treatments continue. On sheet 5, this sheet continues from north of Highland Avenue, heading towards Woodside Avenue. The dedicated bike lanes and color pavement treatments continue. And due to the presence of a curb bump out at the corner of Grove Avenue and Woodside Avenue, which is right here, we're proposing to restripe the existing double yellow center line stripes so the proposed bike lanes can maintain a minimum of 5 feet width in the area. And then following Woodside Avenue as Grove Avenue approaches Route 27, Middlesex Avenue, the bike lanes heading north end due to the presence of dedicated turn lanes at the intersection. Which you can actually, yeah, the yellow shared lane marking symbols begin. So for this sheet at Route 27 and Middlesex Avenue, heading towards Stoneham Place, as previously noted on the last slide, yeah, the presence of the dedicated turn lanes on Grove Avenue for Middlesex Avenue, the dedicated bike lanes and shared lane markings are proposed. And then following the intersection, the dedicated bike lanes continue heading north. And then as for Stoneham Place heading towards the Conrail Railroad Bridge, a separate NJDOT project is present within the project limits from Stoneham Place to north of the Middlesex High School or Metuchen High School parking lot at milepost 0.99. This includes a bridge replacement project for Conrail, Port Reading Secondary Railroad, and we are in coordination with NJDOT for the project. And construction sheet 7. This sheet continues from Crystal Street to an area north of Metuchen High School's driveway. The proposed improvements can include dedicated bike lanes with color treatments, with exception for the Port Reading Secondary Railroad structure, which due to the existing width, it'll have shared lane markings for the proposed. And then as previously noted, the separate NJDOT project will replace the structure and include a wider typical section, which includes accommodations for bicycle lanes. And as for construction plan 8, this sheet continues from an area north of the Metuchen High School driveway, heading towards Mason Drive and the Metuchen municipal border. The proposed improvements include dedicated bike lanes with color treatments that end at the municipal line. I'll pass it back to Denise for this.
Thanks, Wayne. Yeah, so this project, as you said, is using federal funds. Any projects that use federal funds will go through an environmental document process. The type of environmental document for this type of project is a CED, or categorical exclusion document, that gets prepared by NJDOT, Bureau of Environmental Program Resources, and NV5 will provide information to them for that. It addresses everything or any potential environmental issues, from deforestation, which we're not going to have tree clearing, cultural resources, which we're not impacting cultural resources, ecology, threatened and endangered species, wetlands, air and noise, hazardous waste, public reaction similar to this public information center, socioeconomics, and environmental permits. Since we're not proposing to widen the roadway, we're not moving curb or drainage or utilities. It's really involving pavement striping and signage. Environmental impacts are not anticipated, but the document is required, and the approval of the document will be required to go to the next phase of design. So our next steps, we're going to open up to questions and answers. This was our second presentation this evening. We're going to compile all our comments. There'll be a 2-week comment period, and we'll compile comments and responses. We'll complete the PE, or preliminary engineering plans. NJDOT Environmental will complete the CED document, the categorical exclusion document. And then we can finalize, once that CED is approved, we can finalize the preliminary engineering phase. As far as our schedule, we're looking to complete preliminary engineering phase, which we do need that environmental document. If we could get it done by the end of this year, great. If not, it'll be early next year. Final design, since it's only signing, it's signing and striping, there's not a lot of details. We'll be complete with that early next year and to anticipate to start construction next year. Since this is a federal project, each phase requires authorization. So there is some time between each phase for authorization to go to the next phase. So we will open it up to questions and answers. We ask that you use the chat box to ask any questions or provide your comments. After this meeting, we ask that you submit your comments or questions to Jay Muldoon by October 20th. That allows us for a 2-week comment period. This meeting summary will be posted on the website along with this video presentation, the plans that Mike went through before, and the PowerPoint. Jay Muldoon's contact information is below. It's at Metuchen Borough, Director of Special Projects, 500 Main Street, Metuchen, New Jersey, 08840. His phone number is 732-632-8119, and his email is jmuldoon@metuchen.com. Open it up to any questions or comments. We'll ask that you use the chat box.
It looks like we have it looks like a long question, but it says,
Okay.
good evening. Thank you all so much for all your hard work on this project. Grove Avenue is a major artery for our town, and although the speed limit is only 25, people rarely travel that speed, making the road extremely dangerous for bicyclists. I am so excited for this bike lane project because it drastically slows cars down on this street and allows bicyclists, including children biking to the high school, major safe route across town. My major concern is that this lane is not protected. Recent data shows that painted bike lanes do not keep bicyclists safer and do not really increase the amount that people can bike on the road. Just yesterday, Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop said that all painted bike lanes in the city will become protected using Jersey barriers because it is so much safer for users. And then, it keeps going. Let's see, Jersey barriers. I know that we have a giant barrier for the entire length of the lane, but we can install narrow curbs on the lines where the width of the road allows. This will keep users much safer and keep cars away from entering the bike lanes. I strongly suggest you consider including these in your plan. And once this is built, I urge borough officials to continue building our bike network because we know that this network is what needs to make biking safer and function for Metuchen.
So thank you for your comments. Protected bike lane, we did look into that, and we would have to just bump out the curbs. We really didn't have the room for it on what's required to put some type of separation. But that was something that even some of the borough representatives on this evening had asked about. And when this grant application was done, it didn't account for moving the curb line, which, Mike, if you go to some of those existing pictures, you have curb, utilities, drainage. It's kind of beyond the scope of the project. If you go to the pictures in the presentation, I think it's slide 3. Yep, go back to the one with the photos. I'm sorry, slide 5. So what we're proposing now is on Eggert Avenue, sharrows or the pavement markings, alerting motorists that they can anticipate cyclists in the road. And on Grove Avenue, where we can fit it, the dedicated bike lane. The comments that Mike read was, well, can't you put protected bike lanes? We just don't have the room for that, for what's required. I don't know if the borough wants to talk any more about that, but it's really beyond the scope of this project.
see the data from this study, and the attendee provided the URL, which we'll include in our notes.
Okay.
There's also another comment. So it is not possible to deviate from the current iteration of this bike lane project. It is not possible to explore some other way to have protected, it gets cut off, protected bike lanes with the two-way lanes.
Well, what we're saying is that the scope of this grant, for this grant, it wasn't to provide protected bike lanes and to move the curb, drainage, utilities. The grant money that they got could not accommodate for those improvements. So what we're saying,
We're not able to go, we can't go back to DOT and say, oh, we wanted, now we want to do this. The money, this was, again, a grant back in 2018. As Denise said earlier, these are very competitive state grants. There's dozens, if not hundreds, of municipalities that submit for these grants, and then certain projects are selected. This one was selected, so it doesn't work that way. You can't go back and say, give me another $300,000. So it's just you'd have to do a future grant, I guess, to if the borough chose to go towards a protected lane. So we wrote a grant for a certain type of bike lane. We were approved for it, and the budget and the money was allocated for it. So it's just not, it's not the way things work, unfortunately. They don't have extra money to say, if you change your mind or you want to do more. I mean, because again, and I think this was probably was a consideration, like because it is very competitive, you want to be able to write a grant that has the best chance of getting selected and getting funded. Sometimes if you go for, maybe if our request was in the million plus, I'm just speculating, but that may have been a factor that maybe we wouldn't have been selected. So there's a lot that goes into not just grant writing, but sort of your strategy on how you can make your grant more likely to be selected and funded. So I think that was probably a factor among a lot of factors when we're trying to move this whole process about bike safety and pedestrian safety forward. It's a lot of balancing that has to happen. So just trying to give people a perspective and appreciation on this isn't a simple process.
just to add to that, these types of grants don't include utility relocation. So if you were to move that curb, that picture that you see there on the right, and even the one on the left, but on the right, there's drainage. It would introduce environmental permits and possibly some type of mitigation. There's the sidewalk, and just moving back the sidewalk, as you see there, there's a berm on that person's property. You'd have to take right away. So it wasn't just a matter of money. If you have to take right away along this whole corridor, we're at like over 1.2 miles. It would just take years to get the all the right of way approvals and justifying it. So unfortunately, sometimes you think, oh, it's just a minor widening of a road. It kicks in a lot of other issues.
Another comment came in. Will there be an increased lighting along Grove Avenue to ensure proper lighting along the path?
So lighting, I wouldn't call it a path. It's a lane. It's a bike lane within the roadway. And lighting was not included. There is some roadway lighting now, but to answer the question, if there's going to be additional lighting, it's not part of this project.
And it looks like that was the last of the questions for now.
Yeah, you're actually getting great questions. And yeah, not everything has, like we said, a direct answer. And some people might say, well, get frustrated, it wasn't part of the grant. And as Jay said, these grants were competitive, and they felt that this was a good improvement for safety of cyclists along these corridors.
Oh, let's see. Another 2 questions just came in. Thin flex post bollards like this can't be used, and a URL was sent. They cost very little and go directly in the line.
Yeah, so if there's anything like bollards, this is a municipal roadway. If they're permanent or temporary, someone's going to have to come in and put them in and out. If it's something more permanent, we just didn't have the width, what's required for the separation. I think one of the attendees said Jersey City was considering, like, there's Jersey barriers. There's a width associated with the barrier and then a separation. We just do not have that here. And if you did, similar to this public meeting, you would have to present that to the property owners along these corridors, and they might not like the look of something like a Jersey barrier in this location. That's just another thought, but.
Yeah, and I did have a neighbor contact me last week who received, invitation to this meeting tonight, and that was his number one. He was supportive of a bike lane, but he said, I hope there's no bollards. If there's bollards, it's going to be a problem. So, we definitely considered and need to consider the residents who live along. So again, it's a big balance act. But as Denise said, bollards were not included in the grant. Sorry.
Another question came in. Does the plan consider school buses run along Grove in terms of the remaining width of the road?
So if school buses stop now to pick up students right on the road, a school bus, someone had a question earlier, what about emergency vehicles? If there's obviously a disabled vehicle and they're temporarily parked there until they get towed away, a cyclist would have to go around them. Are there bus stops right on Grove Avenue? I think that's what their question is if there's a bus stop there. A school.
It looks like they said yes. School bus stops.
Yeah, so
school buses obviously take Grove to get to the high school. I'm trying to.
No, I think they meant if they physically stop on Grove Avenue to pick up students.
Yeah, but there would be no change in the. Right? I mean, I think it was questioning the width of the road. Would the width of the road?
Yeah, we're not changing the width of the road, but I thought their question is, can the school bus stop in the bike lane? Maybe I'm misinterpreting their question. If they could just clarify their question. We're not widening the road.
They just said yes. So it seems more of a question about instead of remaining width of the road, like the typical section is going to be 5-foot bike lanes and at least 11 to 12-foot through lane. But it seems like, it's a question about buses stopping in the bike lane to pick kids up.
Yeah, so we're not proposing to change any of the school bus stops for stopping and picking up.
Let's see. They said thank you.
All right.
Another comment came in. Could the borough fund bollards through their budget in the future to protect this lane?
I'll look till Jason and Linda are elected on that one.
Yeah, I think, Jay, it's beyond just the the funding issue. It's can you fit them? So even with the bollards, there'd be a width on and how many you're going to fit. how many you're going to place, and if you can physically fit them without taking away from your minimum travel lane. So I mean, that's something that overall.
I would also add, Denise, that there's other cost consideration aside from the actual cost of the bollards. I mean, they will have to be, you know, for when there's a storm, somebody's going to have to go out and
Yeah.
collect them so that we will be able to plow. And, you know, there's a maintenance that will go along with them, and our DPW would have to be responsible for that. So, I mean, there's more considerations than just buying a few bollards and throwing them out there in terms of costs. And so, you know, I'm not saying it's not something we wouldn't look at on down the road, but right now, I think with the way the pavement is painted and separated from the rest of the road, I think this is the grant that we wrote, and this is the project we're doing.
Yeah, so in addition to the pavement markings, which is both the colored pavement, the pavement symbols, both in the bike lane and where we don't have it and we're sharing them, there will be signage as well. So on the plan sheet that Mike has there right now, you'll see some of the signs.
It looks like 2 additional comments came in. One regarding the bollards. Bollards were once used for crosswalk areas along Grove, and they didn't last very long. And then another comment was, will there be increased enforcement by the police department for people who park in the lanes and cars that drive in the lanes, which are bound to happen if there's no protection?
So we had a similar question after our first presentation at 6:05. So there will be enforcement, and you can't park in a bike, and you obviously can't park in a bike lane. You're not supposed to be driving in the bike lane. So there will be some enforcement, but we did have that question earlier. And that would be with any type of, you know, change to the existing roadway if something is prohibited.
I believe that's all the comments for now.
Okay. We'll be here till 8 o'clock. If you're leaving us, we appreciate your input. We got a lot of great questions. As we said, we will be summarizing comments and questions, and they'll be posted on Metuchen's website. We'll have a 2-week comment period, so not all the questions and comments will be posted, you know, in the next 2 days or so, but these plans, the PowerPoint, and the video presentation will.
Let's see. One person thanked us for the presentation. Another question is, can the presenter indicate how many people from the public participated in this session?
Sure, we could give a tally.
I believe at the height of this presentation, we had 13 attendees and 5 members of the panel. So
I thought I saw 15. At one time, I thought I saw attendees of 15, but I'm not seeing this as you. So yeah, and as we talked prior to this, we've done a number of these. We have had some where we've had over 50. We have had some where we might have only had 6 people. Since the meeting is being videotaped, some people may have had other commitments this evening. They may decide to watch it when it's convenient to them and then provide any input or comments.
Denise, do you know how many letters were sent out to the neighbors along the route?
Oh yeah, so we did a stakeholder list, and we identified all the adjacent property owners. In addition to that, we do what we call as other stakeholders. As Jay said in the early one, we invited Edison, and Mike can maybe pull it up there. What was their total tally?
50 stakeholders, 274 unique property owners.
So those people all got a letter. The person who asked the question may have gotten a letter, or they may have seen a public notice. The meeting was well advertised. We're in preliminary engineering. There will be another public information center also in the final design phase. That's a requirement for federal projects. But yeah, some people just choose not to participate. Sometimes we find that if it's what we call quality life or a good project, people hear about it and they say, okay, that's great. And they're not necessarily going to attend a public meeting. If we were widening the road or doing something where it's going to impact adjacent property, you tend to get more participants.
One of the attendees said, "Thank you all. Have a good evening."
Likewise, thank you. And actually, we've conducted, Mike and I together, several virtual meetings. We had one municipality in northern New Jersey that did want a in-person public information center. But we found in a lot of cases we get more participation when they're videotaped and then it's posted. People will, like we said, come at their convenience and watch a video. So there's been some pros and cons. So Mike, if I look at, if I expand my chat, some of them has an unanswered question, but I can't see their question. So if you could check yours, Mike is logged on because he's got a better internet service. So he's the administrator.
Yeah, as the questions were coming in, I guess they were coming into my account, and then
Okay.
yeah, reading them off as they were coming in.
All right. So if anyone has a question that was not answered, please ask it again, and then we'll see it. So Jay, if anyone does decide to call you, we always include that option. If they do decide to call you, we just ask that you send us an email and let us know what their question or comment was. Obviously, if they email you a question, you could just forward us the email, or if you respond to them, either or.
Right, I'm sure there'll be, depending on the question, something that you guys may have to answer versus, but
Correct.
you'll definitely see every question.
Yeah, we have to, right. For the public record, we need to see them. Sometimes it might be something that's not part of the project, but we just ask that you provide them for us, because we provide the summary and that actually becomes part of the environmental document. The
Okay.
Public Information Center summary and the comment responses become part of the environmental document.
Okay.
Okay.
New comment came in.
Great.
Will the letters sent to the impacted parties be posted?
So we're not going to post somebody's information, but we can post a sample letter. What it is the flyer. So when we said letter, the flyer is already on your website, isn't it, Jay? Yeah, Mike's pulling it up right now.
Yeah, I mean, what,
When we said people received letters, they received the flyer that Mike has there now, so we could post that on the website.
and that was sent to people living on Grove as well as within, is it a certain number of feet?
Yeah,
It's
So-
250 feet from the project.
yeah.
Right.
So if you did a 250, yeah, what Mike has up there, the red, the project limits, they got a letter. We got their address information
Right,
from Metuchen, and we sent letters to them. In addition, there were public notices. There was the note, on the website. So when we said letters, it was the flyer, the meeting flyer. So yes,
Right.
we could post that if it
I think-
isn't already.
and if it is, I think we need to put a little explanation, because if you just put this up there, someone living elsewhere in town said, "Whoa, I didn't get this. What's going on?" And we all know how
Yeah.
some people can carry on about that. So, this was sent to specifically to residents, property owners within that vicinity. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
where
but
that-
your legal notice had the same information. So,
Right, right.
it was posted on the paper.
Right.
It's also been on the borough website for certainly over a week now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're covered.
I may have used the term letter and they thought that everybody got an individual letter. What they got is the flyer. And then in addition to those property owners, like we said, we identified, the school, other stakeholders. So there were 50 other stakeholders in addition to, adjacent property owners. And the letter does ask the property owners that if they have renters to inform them, or if it's a business. So we'll stay till 8 o'clock. Like we said, we got some great questions and comments, and we'll be preparing a summary that'll be posted.
Let's see, 3 comments came in. Oh, 4. Will any homeowners lose the ability to park in front of their houses?
Okay, so great question. We checked that, and what we did is we looked to see where there was access. You won't be able to park in the bike lane, in the dedicated bike lane. So on Eggert Street, if there's parking there now, it'd be fine. So you won't be able to park there, but what we did check is that if there was access to each of the residences, either a driveway or a rear access.
And then, let's see. A question came in for Jay. What is the status of signage with this project?
The sun,
Yeah, Denise, I think you can answer this, right?
Yeah, so this may have been a question that we got before the presentation where somebody said, or, don't contribute to sign clutter. There will be signs and they are required. What we talked about is MUTCD, or the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. We want to alert motorists that there's cyclists in the road or in the bike lane. So there will be signs that are required per standards. We're not going to compromise the standards and put less signs because of sign clutter. But there won't be an overabundance of new signs if that's the same person who asked a question before the meeting. If they didn't, and if I didn't answer your question, please rephrase your question.
So I think, we're going to do the, what's required, but to me, that would be, the minimum where we don't want to create clutter, but, there are, I guess, standards that we have to requirements. So that's
what I'm sorry. Yeah. So what Mike just zoomed in on is what the signs would look like. So where it's sharing the road, I would say the bikes are sharing the road, and where there's a bike lane, it'll have, beginning and ending bike lane. But obviously where you have an intersection and somebody's coming from a side street, when they turn on, they'll see a sign that there's a, bike lane.
And Denise, is it correct that as we move into final design, the quantity of signs will then be known? In looking in the plans that that are available and will be on the website, there's a page of second page has distribution of quantities. Will that be populated at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mike, we probably already have an approximate number of the signs, but we could do that. But yeah, I think a resident or stakeholder's concern was that they felt that there was a lot of sign clutter, and now you're putting another facility and you're going to be putting a lot, what they considered unnecessary signs. And just as designers, we have to have, meet the requirements for the required number of signs. This is a safety improvement project, and we're not going to compromise on that.
It looks like a follow-up by the attendee. Now, how many signs are we talking about? What is the minimum? The standard 20 years ago was over 100. I think it might be 100 feet between signs, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So Mike, I don't know if we finished tallying them all up, but we could get that information, within the next 2 weeks. We'll have that information. We could put it as a comment response. So we're starting to show. Yeah.
Yeah, if you could provide the type of sign, quantity.
So what?
Yeah,
Mike, if you zoom in and show like the symbols of where they're shown. But yeah, we can provide that information.
Oh, it looks like another follow-up. Let's see, 100 signs were placed out over 20 years ago.
Okay, so what they're saying is there were over 100 signs placed, and they could mean all different things. Maybe there were parking regulations or this or that. I'm not sure if the borough has, a sign inventory. As far as this project, we're going to be proposing the signs that are required for the proposed treatments. And, as Mike zoomed in now, there's a legend on each sheet, and then like that one's showing that there's going to be the bike lane sign there. And when you go to the website, you'll be able to zoom in similar to what Mike's doing now, because it'll be a PDF. And like we said, if there's any questions, just get the questions through Jay and we'll be able to answer them.
Let's see, no bike lane signs. That does not seem excessive.
Yeah, like we said, we're definitely going to have at least the minimum. And then it's also a feel if we go out there and for whatever reason, we feel that something else is needed, we would suggest that. And then earlier, somebody asked about what we call wayfinding signs, or how to get someplace and how to get like to the other trails. You know, that would be considered, but the intent of the project was for the bike lane. And I guess if that attendee feels that there's some unnecessary signs that are not regulatory signs, it's not part of this project, but if it's an old sign that you said it's been up there for years and it's perhaps no longer applicable, I guess just let the borough know.
Yeah, we can do, we recently did a sweep on Main Street, removing some, you know, unnecessary signs, faded signs,
Yeah.
necessary. So we need to continue to do that so we can, between now and implementing this, we can do that and remove any, you know, unnecessary signs.
Well, we've got about 3 minutes left, and if you have your questions, keep providing them. It's been good that sometimes we're waiting, staring at each other for 20 minutes to get a question. So, and we appreciate, we got a lot of great input.
There is one more comment. No, a failed bike lane was attempted 20 years ago. 100 signs were placed out on Grove and Woodbridge, not again.
That's more of a comment than a question. So we're piling comments. So the comment period will be open for 2 weeks. And the reason why we do that is for all our federal projects, we do a 2-week comment period, and we kind of have to put an end date to it. This way we could wrap it up and get that information for the environmental document. So we'll be taking comments through October 20th. We'll ask that you submit comments through Jay Muldoon. He's the project manager for this project and the director of special projects. His contact information is on the screen. Jay Muldoon at Metuchen Borough, 500 Main Street, Metuchen, New Jersey, 08840. His phone is 732-632-8119, and his email, jmuldoon@metuchen.com. And we appreciate everyone for your input. Some of you folks, I think, have stayed with us the whole 2 hours. We appreciate that. And as I said probably a number of times, but this video presentation will be posted to the website. Just give a day or two. We have to download it from the webinar, folks, and then get it over to the borough and for them to upload it. It's a fairly large file. The project plans will be posted along with the PowerPoint presentation. And somebody did ask that we just post again the flyer. I know Jason said that it is posted on the website, but if all this information is at the same spot, that'll be helpful.
Right. So Mike and Denise,
Thank you for organizing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, and like we said, there'll be another one in the final design phase. So thanks, everyone. Good night.